Body horror is a subgenre of horror fiction that intentionally showcases grotesque or psychologically disturbing violations of the human body or of another creature. Or so Wikipedia tells me.
Oh, brother!
Most effectively pioneered by filmmakers such as David Cronenberg, John Carpenter, and John Landis. However, body horror in film actually exists as far back as the Universal monster films with The Wolfman in 1941 and Freaks in 1932. Even further in written fiction with The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with Robert Louis Stevenson's novella, as it's infected pop culture over the years, but effectively, it involves an investigation into the unexplained disappearances and crimes linked to one Mr. Edward Hyde, with the climax of the novel showing how he is the same person as the esteemed Dr. Henry Jekyll. The main horror of the novel, in my reading experience, comes from the descriptions from Henry Jekyll in his written confession in chapter 10.
That I was slowly losing hold of my original and better self, and becoming slowly incorporated with my second and worse. I saw that of the two natures that contended in the field of my consciousness, even if I could rightly be said to be either, it was only because I was radically both. My devil had been long caged. He came out roaring.
First appearing in Detective Comics number 400, being co-created by Neil Adams and Frank Robbins, Man-Bat was created to challenge Batman as a sci-fi twist on Jekyll and Hyde. You're probably already aware of the story of Man-Bat from the pilot episode of Batman the Animated Series, On Leather Wings, or the Arkham Knight side mission, Creature of the Night. And while these are very good portrayals of the villain, with the Arkham Knight side mission the most heart-wrenching, I find that the 1995 Batman Legends of the Dark Knight Annual Wings, penned by Chuck Dixon and inked by Enrique Alcatena, to be the most terrifying.
Do you believe the crap they put in the papers these days? All this Batman hysteria, what a crock!
If you want the hard news, maybe the Gazette would be more to your liking, Simmons.
But the Inquisitor's got a better sports section, Felcher. I'm sick of hearing about this Batman guy. The same pinheads who believe this stuff believe in flying saucer abductions and Elvis sightings. What do you think of this Batman stuff, Kirk? Kirk? Heard of Batman? Hangs outside old ladies' windows dressed like a giant bat?
Excuse me, Daryl. The Batman? Mass lunacy, I'd say. There couldn't be any such thing.
Meet our intrepid doctor, Kirk Langstrom, chiropterologist, bookworm, and denier of the Batman. Here in the first 3 pages, we already learn a lot from Kirk, as a character. He is timid, judging by his softly spoken answer to the jockey scientist Dr. Simmons. We also notice his hearing aid, which will come up later as we learn that Kirk is the victim of a degenerative hearing disease, something Simmons is constantly berating Langstrom for. His fiancée, Francine Lee, shows up to ask why he had missed their intended lunch to decide on the menu for their wedding, showing how dedicated he is to his work and that he barely notices the world around him. Speaking of which, what is so important to Kirk that he neglects the rest of his life?
Of all the species I've studied, the bat is the most amazing. A creature of incredible adaptability. Whatever the threat posed to them, they overcome it by strength, by cunning, by sheer force of will. The bat has many talents. Foremost is his tenaciousness to the hunt. Next would be his ability to sense and avoid danger, and his agility in the air, like an acrobat born to the night sky. And the bat is territorial. Once he claims an area, it is his for life. He will return there night after night, either by habit or design, and everywhere within his nocturnal flight he claims is his, a world of night known only to him. In most corners of the world he is hated. His world is one of cloaked secrecy and constant danger. He is a symbol of fear. Lies are told about him to cover his mysteries. But in some places he is worshipped. And those mysteries may be closer to the truth. But it is my intent to catalog those mysteries, to understand what makes the bat unique among God's creations, not by observing what can be seen by the naked eye, but by looking at them on a chromosomal level, by unlocking the code that gives them their most unusual traits. That is the real mystery I've yet to plumb.
Kirk takes his research plan to the university the next day to seek funding to begin human trials of his experiments. This egg-headed looking bitch claims that his theories are crackpot, and claims it would only result in a freak show oddity. Kirk leaves, feeling dejected, and returns to the lab. Later that night, Francine finds him in a desperate rage, and after forcing her to leave, Kirk decides that enough is enough. Enough of his inadequacies, enough of the ridicule by his scientific peers, and enough of the pain. He fills up a syringe of the drug and uses himself as the first human test subject.
I awaken to a tapping sound. No. A dripping. Simmons never shuts these faucets tight enough. Then it strikes me. I heard the dripping.
Kirk bursts into the lab the next day as a new man, his restored hearing finally giving him a new sense of hope. The work he put into his experiments paid off at last. Taking Francine out to the city that night, Kirk hears everything the city has to offer for the first time in years. But that's just the problem. Kirk hears everything.
Sounds. The city comes alive in my ears. A car horn, a barking dog, a couple arguing in Spanish, the creak of a floorboard 2 stories up, a man whistling over on Vanguard. What have I done to myself?
The next day, Francine comes by to check on the doctor, who hasn't shown up to the lab in some time. Langstrom sits huddled in shadow, a sheet crudely thrown over him to disguise his rapid transformation.
Francine can't help me. No one can help me. My only hope is the use of the university's lab, but I can't go there like this. The transformation proceeds every day. When it will end, I can only wonder.
He looks into the mirror but cannot recognize himself. Saddened red eyes stare deep into the reflection. Talon-like claws scrape the surface with unnaturally pointed ears, rough skin peppered in fur, and a nose almost entirely lost in its shape.
And what will be left of Kirk Langstrom when the process is over? Already my personality surrenders to another. No, not a personality. An instinct. Wild and uncontrolled, with hungers and desires that are alien to me. And the blackouts come with a greater frequency.
He cowers himself in the corner, covering his face with his claws like an animal would, blurring the lines between man and monster. The next time Kirk awakens, he hangs upside down on a bar outside. Dropping down, he notices a restaurant worker. This incident leaves the ending ambiguous as to whether Kirk actually went through with it and killed the man. Notably, he does this in the interim between blackouts. If he really did kill this man, he would have been doing it fully conscious as the Doctor. This leads you to question how much of the Doctor left really is there. This leads into the saddest panel of the comic.
Pain in my joints as they lengthen. Sounds are starting to turn into echo patterns. Can see the room when I close my eyes. Skin toughening, spine arching. So far away, so far. I can't go back. And I live in fear of what lies ahead. I can't be Kirk Langstrom. I can't even be a man. No, I choose to end it all. I go to my death while I still have a choice in the matter.
Accepting his metamorphosis and shedding his humanity, Langstrom then goes on to have a run-in with the Batman, leading him to find a hidden entrance to the Batcave. Batman subdues the monster and returns him to Francine, where she has developed a cure to reverse the process. Just as Man-Bat is about to escape, she shoots him with the cure, causing him to revert back to normal, with the ending revealing that Langstrom spent 9 months in his bat form. A shocking revelation, as he only spent 25 pages of the actual comic time in this state. Now, in this brief recap of the annual, I neglected to bring up the Batman subplot. Essentially, it follows Batman against a group of masked criminals who seem to be able to constantly evade him. In order to catch up with these miscreants, Batman develops reinforcements to his arsenal to give himself an edge, but in the end, it is Man-Bat who is responsible for their incarceration. The only reason I bring this up is that the actions of Batman in this comic perfectly mirror that of Man-Bat. Ultimately, Kirk Langstrom's goal of injecting himself with his serum was not to disprove the scientists that doubted him, it was to cure himself of his own presumed weakness. In fact, I personally believe this may be the only reason as to why Langstrom was ever interested in transferring animal traits to humans. The panel of Langstrom staring longingly at a cage of bats sticks out to me, almost like he envies their qualities for himself specifically. I mentioned before how Man-Bat was created to challenge Batman. This is because I believe every great Batman villain must follow the key tenet that the core principle of the Batman villain is to challenge an aspect of his mental or physical persona. For example, Mr. Freeze's obsession with his wife is representative of Batman's clinging to the memory of his parents. Two-Face's extreme black and white morality is representative of Batman's constant pursuit of justice, even if there are situations where the law may not be absolute. And Poison Ivy's fanatical obsession over nature is representative of Batman's extreme love for Gotham City. All this to say, I believe that the purpose of Man-Bat as a Batman villain is to be a foil to Batman's need to be a symbol, and not a man. As it is stated, I think, to best effect in the Nolan trilogy,
as a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting.
Simply put, if Batman existed as a fleshed out human being to the scum of Gotham, it would be incredibly difficult for him to strike fear into their hearts and act as a symbol of impartial justice and humanity. To do this, Bruce Wayne temporarily sheds his humanity when he goes out as the Bat. While it may be the case that some of Joker's goons are nothing more than wayward souls, an example best used in my favourite comic, Kings of Fear, which you should check out my video on, Batman is unable to act as a compassionate character to these people, as it would be denying the absolution of justice. Even though these people may be tragic, they have still committed a crime, and in Batman's morality must serve punishment for that crime. So here we have Bruce Wayne, who chooses to abandon his empathy and humanity when he becomes his alternate persona to better his goals, and Kirk Langstrom, who is unwillingly forced to abandon his humanity through a hostile takeover of his identity when all he wanted to do was cure himself of an ailment. And it is this hostile takeover that truly elevates the horror of Man-Bat's existence. And so finally, 1500 words into the script, we can finally talk about the body horror. A key concept to understanding body horror and how it relates to Man-Bat is the difference between man and beast. Man is a thinking creature. Aware of itself and its existence, man understands the consequences of his actions and can make efforts to mitigate them. A beast is a reactionary creature. The beast has no ability to think introspectively and relies on spur-of-the-moment decisions for survival. The true horror of Man-Bat comes from the losing of the ability of man and surrendering to the shackles of the beast. As Kirk Langstrom's transformation progresses, he loses more and more of his mental faculties that make him human, along with the obvious physical characteristics that define him. Of those physical characteristics, a large part of the terror comes from the concept of watching your physical self change day by day, into someone or something wholly unrecognizable from where you started. Imagine the Oscar-winning transformation scene from An American Werewolf in London, but instead of taking place over a minute, it takes place over months. Watching your limbs and joints slowly expand day by day, your nose turns slightly flatter as time goes on, the skin under your arms beginning to sag and web together, the pupil of your eye slowly expanding to cover your whole vision before being snuffed out like a candle, left only to your heightened hearing and sonic patterns. Perhaps the worst part of all is knowing that you're developing and not regressing, gaining the skills of a foreign beast in exchange for your comfortable perceptions, powerless to do anything to stop it. The mirror test is a behavioural technique to assess whether an animal is able to recognise itself, and is generally one of the first signs of intelligence among animals. Humans are of course able to see and identify themselves in reflection, as I'm sure you are well aware, but bats, being blind to mirrors, cannot. However, it is noted that among bats, they are able to recognise individual sonic emissions, like a unique voice. In terms of Man-Bat, Kirk would over time lose one of the core definers of being human and being accepted into one of the bats. We can even see him in the comic swarming with a cauldron. And so it is this change that instills so much of the unease from a story such as Man-Bat's. When discussing how Langstrom changes over the course of his story, I'd like to point to an extract from Philip Brophy's The Body Horrible. If any of the themes in today's video interest you, I implore that you check out this essay, as it makes excellent points. When referring to the xenomorphin alien, Brophy notes, the alien monster massacres by inhibiting the body, using it initially as a living incubator, then feeding from it in order to shape its own body through a series of biological transmogrifications. The monster is alien to the human body. I believe this is the same logic that the bat serum operates under when controlling and mutating Langstrom, the invasion of a foreign body which causes internal change to make the host more acclimating to its needs. And so, with really thinking about humanity in terms of the physical and mental It's hard to say that Kirk Langstrom in the Man-Bat form is truly a member of the human race. His deteriorating mental state and foreign form disqualifies him. And it is this loss of humanity, this unholy transformation over such an excruciating amount of time, that factors into why I think Man-Bat is one of Batman's most depressing and terrifying rogues.